Today, I'm going to be taking the first step to making my very own knife, and that is by taking a pre-made blade and making a handle and attaching it and having my very first knife that I've made myself. A lot of people out there don't have their own equipment like me, so this is a really good step for anybody out there that is a beginner that wants to get into knife making themselves. But there's a lot of challenges with this. I've never actually made a knife or done anything like this before, and I don't really know what I'm doing. So chances are I could fail at a lot of steps during this process. So to get started, I actually need a pre-made blade and I need something I'm going to be making the handle out of. To do this, I didn't really know which step I wanted to get. There's actually a bunch of pre-made blades online, but there's two of my favorite makers out there that actually put out two of their products that would be perfect for this challenge. One product is this really awesome knife blade that was made by Diresta himself. There's a lot of challenges with this alone. This actually doesn't come with pre-drilled holes for where you would normally put some type of metal dowels to hold the handle in place and make it nice and secure. So we're gonna have to figure out a way around that. Now there's a lot of options out there on the market, but I was able to find a maker out there that I also love very much that put a product out there that I think would fit really well for this challenge. And it's right here in this package. This is from Woby Designs. And if you know Woby, he designs a lot of pieces made out of skateboards. So these are two of his offcuts of a bunch of skateboards stacked up and already epoxied together. They're not perfect, there's some gaps in them in certain areas, but that's okay, I think we're gonna get around that. So I thought this would be really cool to be used as our handle blade. So the first thing I have to decide for this project is, do I want the knife scales to be running alongside with the blade or perpendicular? So I've decided that I am going to orient the knife scales from Woby in a horizontal pattern behind it because I want more colors to pop on the actual handle. I hope I'm not going to regret this because I think it would also look nice if it was vertical. But if it was vertical, it wouldn't show enough colors. It would look nice being elongated like that, but we're gonna take a shot on that and hopefully that'll work. I've only got two of these pieces, so I have to be really careful not to waste it, but I think the horizontal is gonna look best. So I'm gonna give that a shot and hopefully I'm not making a mistake here. So I was really afraid of cutting this on the bandsaw because these are skateboard parts that are glued together and so they could be really fragile. But luckily, I didn't end up breaking it when I ran it through there. Now, because I'm on a time crunch, I'm actually going to be using some 5-minute epoxy, and I'm hoping this will set strong enough so that the handle will be nice and secure on the blade, but it'll also let me get working a lot faster. So these epoxy kits are really easy to work with once you open them up. I'm going to apply it to the outside of the blade and just mush it up against here, and hopefully that'll be enough to hold it strong. Let's give it a shot. So let's go ahead and get this mixed up. I think that's enough. Now let's go ahead and mix it up really well here. You should see the color start to change, get a little cloudy, which it is. That looks nice. Okay, now let's go ahead and pick up our knife here. And we're going to just kind of lather it on here. Feels kind of weird. I feel like I'm like destroying a Diresta knife. If I don't do this right, I'll destroy something that I love from one of the makers I love, and I would really hate that. So I'm really hoping this works out. And a whole bunch got in the letters. We're just gonna have to deal with that after, unfortunately. Now we take the knife scale, so let's put that part up against it like that. So now let's go ahead and take our clamps. So this is where we left off. Let's take a look. And it's looking pretty good as a start. I was hoping I'd have a little bit more room at the bottom of the blade, but that might be okay. It's still a pretty good size for a hand. So now, we're not gonna clean up the edges just yet. We're going to actually try and drill out all of the Diresta name. And now I'm just kind of wish I realized this before. There's a lot of really tiny parts inside of the Diresta name there. The goal here is to cut out the wood so that when we screw the other side of the wood on, we can still see the letters, and then we can screw in from the other end, and it should be easier to clean up the entire blade. So we're gonna try and do as much with the scroll saw as possible because it'll just make our life a lot easier. This is by far still like one of my favorite purchases of just like as many drill bits as possible. It was from like Amazon, so it was very cheap. And they're not like the best, but they're really good for this exact purpose. I just want to start drilling through some of the letters. And a couple holes so that you can get the drill bit. So you can start to see that this is actually working pretty well. I'm getting large enough holes. There are some really problem areas, like this A is really, really thin. That's gonna take me the longest amount of time. Let's see if we can get inside the A here. Nope, that's not working. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this guy off. I don't even know if this blade will pass through with these bolts on it, honestly. We'll start with the biggest letter and make it the easiest.
When I started cutting, I noticed that I had to cut through both the epoxy and wood material, which made this a lot more difficult.
All right, let's see how that came out. Nice. Okay, so you can see it actually kind of looks like the same letter because of the type font type of thing. It almost looks like the two eyes right there. So let's go ahead and finish the rest of these letters, and then we're gonna get to the glue up.
It was really hard to fit the scroll saw blade within the knife blade holes, so I just had to do my best to take the blade, run it across all the material, rotate it, and just cut away as much of that material as possible.
Okay, so that's really coming together now. Most of the big letters are cut out. The small ones I can't actually even get to with this, so I'm gonna use a Dremel tool, and I hope there's a small enough bit that can get into these tiny holes, because I just really want to make sure I get clean enough detail. So I've got some bad news. Even my Dremel tool, these bits for the Dremel are like too big to fit into the small parts of the letter. So I need a new game plan, and I'm struggling with this. These are really tight corners. I have an idea. I don't know if it's necessarily a good idea, and I really don't want to screw this up. What I'm thinking is I'm going to throw this on the Glowforge, and I'm going to draw like a square that fits on this handle and let it just laser everything as much as possible and see if that lasers off the wood in the backside. I really hope that doesn't screw everything up. I hope this like with the epoxy isn't too flammable. There's so much that can go wrong, but I really can't think of another solution. So if that goes wrong and I still post this video and you guys have a suggestion, go ahead and shoot in the comments if there is a better way to do this. I just can't think of one. All right guys, great news. I actually posted on my Instagram for some help, and lo and behold, Jimmy himself, Jimmy Diresta, reached out because he actually thinks the knife looks pretty cool, which is really exciting. So I guess we're going down the right path. And he actually suggested using dental drills to try and get in that area. Now, I couldn't find any dental drills online, but that did lead me to this, which is called a micro drill. And so this definitely looks like it's small enough. It definitely looks fragile. I'm gonna hopefully not break too many of these bits getting into these areas.
I loaded up the smallest bit in the tool and decided to give it a shot. I quickly realized how underpowered this motor was, and therefore I had to take it really slow so that the motor wouldn't seize up and so that the bits wouldn't break as easily. This took a long time. The epoxy kept gumming up into the router bit, and it took a while to just try and eat away at the wood. And the worst part of all, when I tried to fit the smallest bit into all the tiny spots of the A, it kept catching on the metal and wouldn't work at all. So I'm gonna need another solution, but the problem is I hardly had an idea how to solve this before, and now I'm completely lost. So I did what I do best. I pushed this off for another day, and hopefully the answer will end up finding me. Now I'm just gonna cut away the edges of the wood to get it closer to the actual blade handle, just to make it a little bit easier to handle as we keep working here. I'm using a scroll saw here and taking it nice and slow because I'm pretty afraid of pieces of the wood chipping off if I push it too hard. The skateboard wood is a really cool looking design, but because of the thin slits of wood being all glued up together, it actually makes for a lot of fragile parts, and I really don't want to break off any pieces here as I'm working. I also found it really challenging here because I tried to cut as close to the blade as possible just to make it easier later when I'd have to sand away at the handle. And with all the pieces cut away, I can finally start to get an idea of what this is going to look like at the end, and I'm pretty happy. And good news, it looks like our supervisor is pretty happy with our work as well. So the tool did a really good job getting into a lot of these tight spaces, and it's looking really, really nice. But this one line for the A is just even smaller than the smallest drill bit on this tool, and so that's not going to work. It keeps getting caught on the metal, and that obviously won't work. So I need to go back to the drawing boards to figure out what else I can kind of just get in there to kind of make those cuts for the A. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to sleep on it. You gotta figure out a solution in the morning. We'll see. All right, so I'm still struggling getting to the A, but I had an idea. This is a hot X-Acto knife. It's pretty much like a soldering tool that's attached to an X-Acto blade, and that makes it really hot. And I'm hoping that this will let me cut into the wood and kind of burn it as it goes along. I am afraid here that this might burn it and ruin a little bit of the wood look, so I just have to be really careful. I can't let it sit too long because that'll make more of a burn. And I'm only gonna do it at the A slit so that it doesn't mess up any other letter. So let's see if this works. This is the first time I'm using a tool like this, so I actually had no idea really how it worked. I plugged it in and let it heat for a few minutes, but I don't think that's long enough. I'm trying to touch it and it doesn't feel like it would be hot enough to actually burn anything away. So I might have to just leave this a little bit longer and just figure out how to use it before it'll actually work. So I'm leaving it in there right now. It's like not doing anything from what I can tell. All right, take two. It's been about 10 minutes. Let's see if we can melt into this knife. There's a lot of challenges with this tool. You can't normally stick a knife through wood, so I have to apply a good amount of force and see if it would actually start to cut in there. It's actually starting to chip away. This might work. Let's see. I quickly learned that the trick here was to be slow and steady with this knife. I would put it in, let it heat up a little bit, and then move it into the cut. That way I wasn't forcing it too hard. All right, hot knife. That worked for the really tight spot. All right, so now just like before, I'm gonna take the extras I had. I'm gonna match up the same grain direction, so vertical. So same piece of wood lets me get the same skateboard colors on both sides, which look really nice. Before I got started, I just had to cut off all of the excess so that I'd have a workable amount of the skateboard wood for the actual handle. So because I want to reduce the work on my end, I'm going to epoxy this side and then mash it on and clamp it. And then in a few hours, we should be good to go ahead and drill through and have a finished blade. I'm really excited. I'm gonna go ahead and mix up that 2-part epoxy again. That can set in a nice quick 5 minutes. I'm applying it to the wood side, just trying to reduce as much of the epoxy that will end up leaking into the blade later on. And I'm gonna try to line up as best as possible with that other color on the other side of the blade. So the most important thing that I'm checking for now is to make sure that there's plenty of leftover so that when I sand everything down, there's no blade overhanging the handle. The handle is coverage. This part ended up being a lot more difficult than I had anticipated, taking the clamps and applying it so that the wood would press up against the blade. But when I applied the clamps, it ended up moving the wood all over the place, so I had to do this a few times just to make sure that the colors lined up really nice. All right, let's let it dry and glue together.
All right, it's the next morning and let's take a look to see how the glue came up. I'm hoping it didn't get screwed up, but there's only one way to find out. Awesome. Oh wow. That's sick. It's coming out really nice. Let's go ahead and start drilling out the letters. They definitely got a lot more filled out than I would have liked. Like the A's really filled with epoxy and so is the S. So it's gonna take some work to clean this up and get it all finished. But not bad. Not bad at all so far. All right, so we're gonna do the same process as before. I'm gonna first drill out a bunch of holes so that I could use the bandsaw to clear out the letters. And then for some of the tighter spots, I'll use the knife and the smaller drill I have. So as we're going through this, I'm realizing I have to be a lot more careful on this side because there's wood now on the side I'm drilling from. If I angle the drill the wrong way, it'll start to chip away from the details on this side. So I gotta be really careful. I'm hoping I don't screw this up. Hopefully this comes out nice. I don't know.
After getting this far into the project, I realized how much work it actually took to drill into each of these letters and then use my scroll saw to cut away all of the infill of the wood and the epoxy. It just added up a lot of time and a lot of work for the entire process.
All right, now I've got most of the bigger letters cut out with the jigsaw. I can now start working on all the finer details. It turned out to be really nice. I'm really excited with how it's looking. And then we'll clean up the handle and make it like all the finishing touches after that. So next, I'm gonna take the hot knife. I'm actually gonna start with that and just clear up that A. Hoping I don't screw it up because now we're getting to the really fine details and it's pretty easy to mess up any part of this, but we'll see. All right, I'm running into another problem because now, again, we're carving through wood. The knife is actually starting to burn the edges a little bit, so I have to be really careful. I'm really hoping I don't burn it because it would just like ruin the whole look and it'd be really hard to fix. I'm not sure if sanding would take it like all out, so I'm going to just keep picking at it. Hopefully we can make it through without ruining the whole handle. Let's see.
So here I'm putting in the knife and then I'm almost flicking away with the knife, which allowed me to pull it out really fast and really try not to burn the wood around it. This kind of worked for clearing up the area, but it wasn't perfect by any means. I then went back to this little dental drill tool that I ended up getting to clear up more of the area. Once I had cleaned up enough area with the knife, I'd go in with this and just kind of round over the edges and just clean up as much as I possibly could. The good news is I got this to a pretty good point now, so I can actually take it to my belt sander and start to clean up all the edges and cut away at a lot of that excess wood to make it flush with the blade handle. However, after I ended up cleaning up all the edges, I ended up pushing the wood a little bit too hard into my belt sander, and then this happened. That's right, I pushed it a little bit too hard and a chunk of the wood broke off the blade. All right, I've got bad news. I guess as I was sanding it, a piece of the wooden handle broke off, and I'm guessing the epoxy didn't stick onto this side. I don't know what. So now I gotta try and fix it. This is the piece. I hope I'm not missing any. This looks like a pretty clean cut. I'm hoping I can fix it by just kind of gluing it and filling in what I need to, but I'm pretty concerned. Darn. To try to do my best to salvage this, I mixed some more of that 2-part epoxy and I applied a whole heaping amount of it because I really wanted to make sure that this would stick after I let it rest overnight. All right, so I've let this glue overnight. Now's the moment of truth to see if this is completely failed and I have to rework it or if it got saved. All right, let's take a look here. Nice. Okay. Looks good. I just gotta clean up all of the new glue in there, but it's not bad. And I have a new way to sand it so that we don't run into that problem again, hopefully. And now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take this sander. This guy
can eat away a lot. Again, I'll be careful so that doesn't happen again, but we should be able to clean this up pretty nice. But it's gonna make quite a mess, so just to be safe, let's get this done.
So after I got my dust protection on, I ended up using this file sander tool, which really eats away at so much of the wood. So you have to almost be careful. I wanted to make sure that I didn't eat away at parts of it or end up curving, because I wanted to keep the edges of the wood square just to make it look as nice as possible. After I'd cleaned up all of the edges, I took an orbital sander to really smooth out the entire wood handle so that I could get it ready for finishing touches at the end. And it was starting to turn out really nice after this stage.
All right, it's coming out really nice. I'm really excited. The detail's pretty sweet. Now, for the finishing touches, we're just gonna apply a finish and it should really shine. It's been a long time coming up to this point, so I'm very excited. Here we go.
For the wood handle, I ended up using a tung oil because I had it laying around the shop and it really made the colors on this skateboard wood handle really pop out. And after all of these finishing touches, we are finally done. Now, time to check out how the blade came out.